Rigatoni Amatriciana is the king of the 4 Roman pastas. And I made it before on this channel, but that was a long time ago. And me now, 2024 Steve, does not approve of the method. I've since had this dish all over Rome, and it has become my absolute love affair. And it's up there potentially for me as the greatest pasta there ever was. But before we get into what's changed, we first need to talk tomatoes. Now, I think this is the king of the Roman pastas for many reasons, one of which is that it's an evolution of the oldest of the 4 Roman pastas, alla Gricia. And it was only made possible once tomatoes, an American thing, were introduced to Italy around the 1500s. And here are some AI-generated images to represent that moment. Alla Gricia just being pecorino, guanciale, and black pepper. Once tomatoes came into the picture, that got added to alla Gricia to get amatriciana. For a good amatriciana, I like to food mill my tomatoes, which just removes the seeds. If there's any skins on your tomatoes, it removes that and some of the pulp. And what you get is a really smooth, beautiful consistency of a pureed tomato. And this is the only one of the 4 Roman pastas that includes the tomato. And if you don't know what I'm talking about when I'm talking about the 4 Roman pastas, there are these 4 pastas in Rome that you may have heard about that form an essential part of Rome's culinary identity and history. And they're all connected. And to remember which is which, here's a visual I hope you may never forget. On this man's arm at the top, you'll see the most basic of the 4 cacio e pepe, pecorino cheese and pepper, which evolved as a staple for Roman shepherds. Once you add guanciale or cured pork jowl, now you have pasta alla Gricia, the oldest of the 4 Roman pastas and in my opinion, the most underrated. Now, if you add egg to alla Gricia, you get pasta alla carbonara, which was introduced in the mid-20th century around World War II. And if you add tomato instead of the egg, then you get amatriciana. And they all usually include fresh cracked black pepper. And the ingredients used in the 4 Roman pastas form this connective tissue between the pasta and Rome itself. And one of those ingredients is guanciale. And we need to dice it into whatever size you like. Some like it thin. I like it on a chunkier side. I like a little meat to this dish. So you cut it how you like, but we do need to remove the outside of the guanciale. Basically just like cured in this black pepper rub. And it's just a little too tough to eat. So I'll cut off the pepper crust and then I'll cut it into 3 slabs. And then line them up and cut those into thick cubes or lordons. And remember, each of these pieces is made up of about 50% fat and 50% meat, sometimes even more fat. So they will shrink by about half when they cook. So keep that in mind when you're determining the size and shape of your guanciale. Now, what has changed since I last made matriciana on this channel? As I said, it's a bit outdated to the point where even fellow YouTubers are using it as an example of an inauthentic matriciana. No shade at Alex. I respect him and I'm a big fan of his channel. And he was right for calling it out, but it was taken out of context. At the time, I used pancetta instead of guanciale because that was years ago and access to good guanciale was not that readily available even here in New York. But actually, since COVID, as a result of a thing called the Pact for Export, an effort to support local Italian businesses by the Italian government, suddenly good guanciale arrived in the stores around me. You can go on the internet, even if something's not available to you locally, and get this exact same guanciale. I'll leave links down in the description, but I've traveled the world tasting real amatriciana with real guanciale. There's simply no substitute for guanciale in this recipe or any of the 4 Roman pastas. And that's coming from somebody who used to make it differently. And the other classic ingredient in the 4 Roman pastas is pecorino romana, sheep's milk cheese, Roman shepherds. Get it? And this is saltier. So this plus the guanciale, we're gonna have to consider how much we salt the pasta water and the tomatoes. So I'm gonna grate the pecorino like snow on this little diamond-shaped grater I got here. And you can grate cheese on top of this, but I find this almost powdered cheese is way better, and it's how most of the places in Italy I found serve it. Like snow. And always remember, if you get that pre-grated. Now, while for the other Roman pastas, I would suggest a good dry spaghetti for the best experience. For this, not only do I prefer rigatoni, I prefer fresh if you can get your hands on it. That's always been my best experience in Rome when I've had this dish. And there are variations to this recipe, but the best ones I've had stuck with rigatoni, tomato passata or puree, guanciale, pecorino romano cheese, and a little black pepper at the end. But before we get into making a Amatriciana, I try to teach good habits on this show, but we all have bad habits, and some of them can be harmful to your body. But thanks to our sponsor today, Fume, I now have something that can replace a bad habit with a good habit. Fume is a flavored air device that simulates that harmful hand-to-mouth bad oral fixation many struggle with and replaces it with a good habit. And it's not a vape, so it can be used anywhere. It has no nicotine, so it's not addictive. No toxins, no batteries, and even a little fidget thing attached. Now, flavored air is not like vaping. Imagine vapor like a sticky soda, and Fume cores more like an herbal tea. The cores are infused with natural plants and offer good flavors like crisp mint and orange vanilla, but my favorite is the maple pepper. And when I have to sit and edit for long periods of time, having this thing within arm's reach is a real godsend. Really gives you that little kick in the back of the throat that kind of fools you into thinking it's the real thing. And with over 300,000 happy customers, you could be the next one to rid yourself of bad habits. And I've got a special offer for you. For a limited time, when you use my code NACS, you're gonna get a free Fume base when you order the Journey Pack. It's the all-new magnetic stand for your Fume device, so you never have to worry about it rolling all over your desk. Head to tryfume.com, that's tryfum.com, use the code NACS or just scan the QR code on the screen right now and get your free Fume base when you order the Journey Pack today. Now let's get back into Amatriciana. So while a pot of water gets to the boil, in a cold pan, we're going to add the guanciale. Then we're gonna turn the heat on, and then we're gonna slowly render out the fat and brown the guanciale. And instantly when you get that aroma, that smell is that irreplaceable quality of guanciale. We're just gonna cook the guanciale until that fat begins to seep out of it into the pan. And once there's enough of it to pool in one of the corners of the pan, tip the pan and just sort of start to fry the guanciale in its own fat, rendering out that fat, crisping it up, and browning the meat of the guanciale. And once most of that fat's rendered out and the guanciale is crisp, remove it from the pan, but keep the fat in there. Instead of olive oil, garlic, and basil, the guanciale fat is the thing in this dish that flavors the tomato sauce. Then we go straight in with the tomatoes, bring that up to a simmer, and then we just want to let that cook for about 15 minutes just to reduce it to the right texture. We want to reduce out any moisture that's going to make this tomato sauce watery, and we're going to season everything lightly because the ingredients are salty. And once it's nice and thick, then we can drop in the pasta. And the pasta will take about 2 to 3 minutes because it's fresh. If you're making dry, remove the pasta 2 minutes before the package says to and finish it in the sauce. Just when our rigatoni is slightly under al dente, I'm going to remove it from the water and transfer it into the tomato sauce and marry the sauce and the pasta together for the last few minutes of cooking. Stir it around. That sauce and starch will combine and continue to thicken until it coats that pasta. And then once it does, we can kill the heat on the whole thing, allow that pasta to cool down for about 30 seconds, and then we can begin to work in the grated pecorino, melting that into the tomato sauce. And then you're ready to serve. We're just gonna plate a mound of that beautiful pasta, topped with the guanciale, finished with pecorino and black pepper. And that brings us to another reason why this is king. It's just such a more balanced flavor. The rich guanciale, the sharp pecorino, the sweet acidity of the tomatoes. It's a much more harmonious flavor profile than the heavier, cheesier, centric Roman pastas. And because of the tomatoes, it's lighter, it's healthier than those that rely just on the cheese, the pork, and the egg. This pasta is magical. And really the last and most important reason why this is king is just visually and emotionally, this is a comforting dish. Rigatoni soaked in red sauce is my ultimate comfort food. Contrasted with that golden guanciale and just dusted on top with some of that pecorino and black pepper. From a visual standpoint, there's nothing more appetizing to me. And you need that guanciale. That guanciale is what gives this quick 10-15 minute tomato sauce the flavor of a Sunday sauce that's been cooked for hours. This is a brilliant dish that if you keep some of this on hand, this could be a weekly dish in your rotation. Recipe's gonna be down in the description. That's all that I have today. I'll see you next time. Until then, take care of yourself and go feed yourself.